Rise, Meg.
The Force will be with you.
Hello my dear friends, how are you all doing today? I'm back with another video. So I don't know about you, but it feels like we have to wait an absolute eternity for our next installment of anything Star Warsy. Yes, the Book of Boba Fett is coming in December, but it's only the end of January, and we have to wait over a year for The Mandalorian Season 3, and we're not even sure when we can expect The Bad Batch. Nonetheless, I hope I can keep entertaining you guys and keeping you up to date with all things to do with Star Wars along the way. So without any more jibber jabber, let's start today's segment. We begin by talking about how Grogu could be linked to Project Harvester. So I saw this being spoken about in a couple of places on the internet and I've reflected on it personally, so let's talk about it now. The Mandalorian Season 3 could conclude Project Harvester and link Grogu to it. First appearing in the Clone Wars Season 2 Episode 1, Project Harvester was revealed to be a plot by Palpatine to kidnap Force-sensitive children prior to becoming Jedi and brainwash them with slave conditioning protocols similar to the methods employed with clone troopers. Palpatine claimed he foresaw an army of Force-talented spies in his service, trained in the dark side to peer in every corner of the galaxy from afar. To carry out this plan, Sidious employed the notorious bounty hunter Cad Bane to steal a Jedi holocron which, when combined with the sacred Kyber crystal, would reveal the names of every Force-sensitive child the Jedi had identified so far. While it originally seemed that this plan was thwarted with the destruction of Sidious's lab on Mustafar and the holocron being returned to the Jedi Temple, the Sith Lord did not stop there. Although Order 66 and the collapse of the Jedi Order resulted in Palpatine's loss of access to the holocron, his Inquisitors would continue Project Harvester by ruthlessly abducting Force-sensitive children in Star Wars Rebels and transporting them to a secret facility on Arcanis to be forced into serving the Empire. Palpatine's apparent death in Return of the Jedi seemingly eliminated the need for Force-wielding children to be kidnapped, but The Mandalorian may include the story as part of a new purpose, exploring the efforts to revive Palpatine. Seeing as many elements from both the Clone Wars and Rebels have been brought into live action with Mando, it is possible that Favreau and Filoni could be setting up the continuation of the Project Harvester story. Indeed, The Mandalorian Season 2 contained many references to secret Imperial projects, featuring elements such as Gideon's Imperial Science Center, technicians that bore the Imperial Department of Military Research insignia, and the revelation that the clone engineer Dr. Pershing was experimenting on Grogu's blood. This could indicate that Project Harvester may in fact have evolved into the method that will be used to return Sidious to his former power. Pershing himself explicitly states in his message to Gideon that he was only able to harvest a small amount of Grogu's high midichlorian blood count, leading to failed experiments and rejection of the blood from former subjects, which only lends more credence to the theory. In The Rise of Skywalker, it's hinted that the Emperor's loyal followers utilized cloning techniques to synthesize a new Force-sensitive body for his still intact soul to inhabit. With the vats of mangled Snoke bodies seen on Exegol and in Pershing's lab in The Mandalorian, it's not unreasonable to assume that Grogu will be critical to the Empire and ultimately the Final Order. Other Force-sensitive children may have been used as well. Now, speaking of The Rise of Skywalker, I know a lot of people don't like the idea that The Mandalorian will inevitably lead to the sequel trilogy, and whilst I've spoken about that a lot on my channel saying that they probably have retconned quite a lot of the sequels through The Mandalorian Season 2, there still is quite a good chance that they are leading to the events of The Force Awakens, or at least the period of time just before then. And this brings us on to our next article. Jon Favreau hints that The Mandalorian will lead into the sequel trilogy. Now, as a disclaimer, I will just point out that I don't necessarily agree with the logic in this article. I think they've taken a quote from Jon Favreau out of context, but it does point in some direction towards the fact that they are using the sequel trilogy as the basis for what will eventually take place after The Mandalorian ends. I don't necessarily think they're going to show any kind of sequel material in terms of characters and all of that, but they are going to set things up so that the sequel trilogy makes a little bit more sense. So let's have a little read of this article now. The sequels have repeatedly come under fire over the past few years due to their lack of coherency. In particular, Rian Johnson's middle act, The Last Jedi, became very divisive for a number of different reasons. But when you look at all three films, it's difficult to miss that there's a sense of narrative dissonance underlying the plot as a whole. Simply put, The Rise of Skywalker does not seem like a continuation of The Last Jedi, and nor does the latter. Thankfully, Filoni and Favreau's The Mandalorian did not suffer the same fate as the sequels in terms of reception. Quite the opposite, in fact, as the show is currently one of the most highly acclaimed series in the whole world right now. But apparently, the executive producer is also basically winging it as he goes along and writing the story as he goes. In a recent chat with WGA, Favreau seemingly hinted at the fact that The Mandalorian may inevitably tie into The Force Awakens, so this is where I disagree because I think they've made a huge leap here, but I'm going to read you the quote now. "The story unfolded as I wrote it. The Mandalorian inherits a great deal from existing Star Wars stories, and when I write, the context is always a consideration. It became clear that within the established continuity, certain things were likely to transpire." So here I don't necessarily think he's talking about the sequels, he could just be talking about Star Wars lore and various elements of the Star Wars universe in general. For example, he could be talking about the legacy of Luke Skywalker, individual plot points, and themes. A major thing that this article has missed out is the fact that they are going to draw upon the expanded universe and legends in general in The Mandalorian Season 3 and 4. For example, we know that Thrawn is coming back to the Mandalorian universe, probably in the Ahsoka Tano spin-off series, and also we have a Luke Skywalker who's much more reminiscent with the Luke that we saw in Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy. This could of course mean that we are going to get Mara Jade and potentially other plot points from the trilogy as well. They probably are going to link in Snoke and elements of the sequel trilogy to make it make a little bit more sense, but I don't think they're actually going to touch upon plot material to do with The Force Awakens. But as always with these things, I could be wrong. So let's move on to our final subject, and this is more speculation for The Mandalorian Season 3. I thought about something the other day to do with Din Djarin's inheritance of the planet of Mandalore. Now that he's got the Darksaber off Moff Gideon and Bo-Katan wants it, he might rule Mandalore for a while, and I think he's going to contact the Armorer for guidance. But I speculate that Bo-Katan is not the only person that Din Djarin has to worry about. Perhaps there is another nemesis who is coming along who wants control of Mandalore themselves. One thing that someone pointed out on Reddit the other day is the fact that the Darksaber is not the only thing that gives you control of Mandalore. Perhaps there is another ancient Mandalorian relic which holds just as much, if not more, significance. And the only thing that meets this criteria is the Golden Mask of Mandalore, also called Mandalore's Mask. This was a ceremonial war mask worn by the traditional leader of the Mandalorian warrior clans, also known as the leader of Mandalore. Mandalore the Indomitable wore the mask throughout the Great Sith War, and after his death, it passed on to his successor, Mandalore the Ultimate. The helmet was a ruddy golden colour and it prominently featured the iconic Mandalorian T-shaped visor. So what do you guys think of the idea that they could include this in The Mandalorian Season 3? I think the upcoming season is going to focus a lot more on Mandalorian creed and tradition, and I do think this would be a phenomenal relic to bring back to the series. So my dear friends, that brings our video to a close. I really hope you enjoyed today's one, and if you did, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and also be sure to check out my Patreon. For just $2 or $10 a month, you get exclusive access to content that's not found here on this channel. I'm Star Wars Meg, wishing you a phenomenal rest of the day, no matter where you dwell in the galaxy. Have a good one.